When my work is finished, I'm coming back for you.
Hello once more, my little friends. For once more you have found yourself stepping into the middle of the eye. Yes, the eye that sits at the corners of all of your vision. The eye that is seeing you for all that you are and all that you will never be. Step forward. The eye blinks. The eye sees you. The eye is upon you. The future is yours. Are you ready to go? Or in other words, hi everybody and welcome to the Fluffenhammer episode 5.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, he does it to me every single time. Every single time. I don't know why. I should be expecting it at this point, but every time the tone of voice changes from whatever epic entity he's doing. It was Lovecraftian this evening, by the way, Adam. It was very Lovecraftian. You sounded like some lunatic in an Arkham Asylum or something like that, ranting about whatever bizarre visions that they've seen.
I was going to go for a Black Library style one, but I've got a little bit of a sore throat from all the stuff I've been doing today, and I can't actually get the voice right.
I know that the Lovecraftian stuff is also mind-bending, but the secrets in the Black Library, I think if we divulge the ones that we've learned here, we could have a lot of insane listeners on our hands, or even people devolving into Chaos Spawn or something like that.
I'm not going to lie to you. When I first came up with the idea of this, I did come up with the idea of calling the podcast the Black Library Book Club.
I just had, the minute you said it, I had this great image in my mind of like characters like Eldar and maybe a couple of Lords of Change and maybe Magnus the Red and Ahriman gathered around a table sharing whatever tome they happen to have found that week. Or that millennium or something. Well, it's just a little lull in the general carnage of the 41st millennium where they just get together, they forget all of their differences, they put down the bolters and the shuriken cannons and whatever, and they just talk about whatever read they've picked up.
I do like the idea of the reader's corner.
I think that's a great idea. And you know what? I think even the servants of the Chaos Powers would be up for that. I could definitely see Zeech's followers being up for that because they love their books. They love their tomes, and they actually do love sharing them as well. I mean, okay, when they do share them and when they do read from them, people do end up sprouting tentacles and extra mouths and things like that, but that's fine. Slaanesh, well, there's a sort of 50 Shades of Grey thing going on there, definitely. Nurgle? I could see like Nurgle being kind of an avid.
50 Shades of Green.
In fact, I don't even want to go there. There's an area where Slaanesh and Nurgle overlap, and I don't even want to go into it, quite frankly. I think it could make for a very visually interesting army. It wouldn't be one you'd be allowed to play in any official setting whatsoever, but it would be very interesting.
What you're talking about there is the Adepticus syphilis, and I don't really want to think about that. But speaking of mutations brought on by too much reading of forbidden tomes, we are not alone this evening. Oh no,
we've actually
Mr.
managed
George.
to fish one from the warp this time after the failure of our last attempt, which I still blame you for, that Cope's corpse thing. I mean, good God.
Yeah. Dead bodies, trees. I kind of got confused. Yeah. It's entirely my fault. But this time I used 16 dead ravens nailed to the Aldrich walls. And we brought forth the demonic entity known as Jai-D.
Hello. Ew. It sounded like something fell out then. You know, in a very nurgly way, like intestines or something. Yeah, like that. Ew. It sounded like they went splat on the floor, you know, leaving from some orifice that they shouldn't leave by.
Jai, I think you just went full deep one, didn't you?
Yeah, just a little bit.
You should never go full deep one.
Oh, man. And once again, we descend into Slaaneshi territory.
Yeah. What's the hashtag?
Tits and tentacles.
Tits and tentacles.
Or hentai, or whatever you want to call it, you know, Urotsuki Doshi, or whatever, you know.
Oh, we're off to a flying
Oh,
start.
yeah, we are. I mean, we're an
yeah,
inch away
this
from the
pleases
flesh mops coming up.
So, we have lots of things to talk about this evening because we have, as always, we will talk to Mr. Jai about all of his 40k and Warhammer Fantasy Battle lores and joys. There isn't really a huge amount of news or anything coming out this week other than the 40k stuff. The 40k juggernaut continues to rumble onwards.
It really does. It's getting overwhelming now.
It is somewhat.
So much good stuff going on out there.
Myself and yourself appears to have got the new White Dwarf this morning, and good grief, there's a lot in there, and I haven't had time to dissect it yet.
There's more than I would have thought happening at this point. There really is. But as Adam was saying, guys, there's so much. There's so much. And you all know. You've all seen it. You've all been stuck to those message boards and those news and rumour sites. I know you have, because I've seen you there with your faces plastered against the screen.
Hello, everybody. But I am going to quickly do some housework before we get into the show proper. Mostly because we got a lot of really good feedback from the last episode we did, the extra episode.
Oh, great.
And it led into an interesting conversation, and it's something that I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do in the not-too-distant future, which is we were asked on Twitter to try and create a reading list of how to get into 40k in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Now, this is quite interesting because the conversation ended up being, if you could tell me 5 books to read, what 5 books would you do? And I think we're going to try and do an extra episode on a fairly semi-regular basis. It's not going to be, we'll have one of these episodes and then a mini episode. That's not going to happen. But I think every 2 or 3 normal episodes, we'll try and get a mini one out as well. And that's going to...
I think that's a great idea.
And I think that's going to be the next one that we'll do. We'll try and do, as the name was mentioned earlier on, the Black Library Book Club. And we'll try and create a decent list.
As I mentioned earlier, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I just love the image that conjures, of characters from the 40k setting gathered around a table in the Black Library. I'm thinking the more bookish ones. I'm thinking characters like Eldred Ulthran and Magnus and Ahriman. I think that would be loads of fun. I can't see Khan the Betrayer being that welcome there.
I wrote a book. I'm reading Sea Spot Run.
I was going to say, it would have to be, given his attention span, it would have to be something with like a big print crayon.
What have you got there, Khan? Well, oh, changer of ways. See Mary run. Run, Mary, run. I see you've got up a reading scale. Marvellous. But anyhow, so that's going to be what we're going to try and... I can see that turning into something, so I'm stopping it there. So that's going to be something that we're going to try and do. Also, that being said, we are now onto both the old Oil House feed and we've got our own separate feed for the Fluffenhammer itself. And you can find all of this stuff at the fluffenhammer.weebly.com. And we're going to start seeing things starting to turn up. George has done a video for the site, which has been very cool.
Working on a few more.
Excellent. I've started the Mapping the Mortal Realms series of videos. There's 4 of them up now, I think. The last one being Shadespire. I've got some more for the Realms of Life to do, which I'm going to be doing in the next week or so. So hopefully I'm going to be able to find interesting places that have already been mentioned. I'm really looking forward to doing the City of Secrets. I just don't know how I'm going to...
that'll be a fun one.
How I'm going to condense that down into an in-universe entry. Because there's a lot in there.
It's a tricky one. I mean, it's like when you start doing, say, the Crystal Labyrinth or something like that. That's going to be very tricky indeed. I mean, that could last for hours, potentially.
I think that might be one that gets split into 2 or 3 videos. I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to make...
Not a bad idea.
I'm going to keep on going for these little areas first, I think, and then just slowly build up. So, with all that being said then, Mr. George, that is the housework out and done, and we're only at 11 minutes. I'm quite happy with that.
Yes, we're doing all right, aren't we, considering we haven't had that many tangents yet.
Oh, but the tangents are to come, because Mr. Jai...
Oh, of course.
Yes.
How are you today, sir?
I am doing well. I've got all my limbs. I've got the correct number of limbs and digits, so I feel I'm doing good.
Although not all of your entrails, from what it was sounding like earlier.
Well, no, I have them all. They're just not
inside
all in
of
one
you.
place.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, it doesn't seem to bother certain species in the 40k universe that much, does it? I mean, I can think of several off the top of my head that have organs on the outside, and it doesn't bother them at all.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Does this mean that, Jai, are you actually a Tyranid warrior?
Or a homunculus, maybe. They have their organs all over the place.
They do. All right, you Nurglish.
And they can move them about, too.
Yes, that's what that means. That is exactly what it means, yes.
So, Jai, as the guest, we always ask a question to start off the first half of the show to start up the conversations and see where we end up. And that question is, how did you first experience and come into the worlds of Warhammer and Games Workshop, and where did those moments lead to you? Where did those paths go?
Sideways. Because I didn't really get introduced to 40k, I think, the way that some people would have, i.e. directly. It was more of a kind of pottering around the outside edge for a long time, and then because other things happened in my life, all of a sudden it just swirled into the middle. I was always kind of aware of Games Workshop in like 40k. I mean, I knew the names. I vaguely knew what it was about. I didn't really have much of an interest in investigating it, because at that kind of time in my life, always been a sci-fi fan, sci-fi fantasy, all that stuff, my bread and butter for the longest time. But for the longest time, though, my types of sci-fi and fantasy were your kind of stereotypical kind of, here are some good guys, here are some bad guys. There's a very clear delineation between the two, and at the end of the story, the good guys win because that's what happens, and it's all very full of hope. That's
not what you're going to get from 40k. No.
So I wasn't really all
not
that
what you're gonna
attracted
get.
to it. Just like I wasn't attracted to horror as a genre for a very long time, for whatever reason. And then I kind of first started taking interest in it in a fledgling way when I was at uni. Because lots of things are changing. I'm getting older. I'm being introduced to new ideas and things from people I was meeting at uni, which is incidentally, and this is a direct correlation. That's how I was first introduced to Lovecraft through some friends friends of a friend that I made on the same uni course as me, who I was then introduced to.
That's cool.
But you would then think, though, that's also how I got introduced to 40k, though, because that would be a very normal thing to happen. It's like, you meet up with nerdy people at uni. What do nerdy people do? They play 40k. But that's not as straightforward as that. That's not how it happened. But I got introduced to Lovecraft first, which was, I think that was the first step on my journey towards eventually deciding to have a look at 40k. So after that, though, and of course other things happened, like taking more of an interest in horror in general, checking out the Hellraiser series and the what was it there? And Event Horizon.
Yes.
Obviously. I wouldn't come to realise the significance of that until later. It was only with hindsight that I realised the connections involved. Okay, but my tastes were kind of changing, and funnily enough, for some reason I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because I didn't have anything else to do. But I started to get an interest in actually investigating 40k's fiction when I was unemployed, which is not the ideal time.
Not if you're planning on getting into the game. No, not if you're getting into the game part. Definitely not. No.
Yes. Well, I was never really interested in the game part as such, and I still I'm not interested in gaming. And I think one of the reasons why initially I wasn't even interested in giving it a look in, because I was like, it's tabletop gaming. I'm not into that. That's for nerds.
It does have even now,
No.
Absolutely, it still has that sort of nerdy patina, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, I can be normal. I can pretend to be normal. No.
Look, these nerds are lesser than me.
Yes.
They're uber nerds.
Yeah,
I'm just some kind of geek. These nerds, however.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just lying to myself, trying to hold on to some vestige of self-respect. But once you go down the wargaming path, it's like there's no coming back. It's like that is the stereotype. It's every stereotype, and I just can't do that. So I was kind of instinctually put off from it for that reason. I'm still not really that into tabletop gaming. It just doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
Really, to be honest. But for some reason, while I was unemployed, is when I started to actually look into it, because I had a lot of free time. And I'd already had this kind of transformative period during my uni days of being more interested in horror and Lovecraft and all that jazz.
Being introduced to it through Lovecraft is fantastic. I mean, you were introduced by some of the most significant and influential stuff imaginable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
As we've always said, it's the two biggest things that influence Games Workshop's original worlds are Lovecraft and Moorcock.
Tolkien and Lovecraft,
and
Moorcock,
Tolkien, actually, yeah. So you've got Tolkien for Fantasy Battle, which then feeds 40k. But then you've got the Lovecraft element for the Chaos Gods and all the stuff that comes out of that, and then the Moorcock influence of just you're not going to win this.
Yeah, it's dark fantasy, isn't it? It's ambiguous fantasy.
It's
amoral fantasy, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah. I mean, the only difference really between 40k and Fantasy Battle is that one fantasy is set in a fantasy world, the other's a fantasy world set in space. Because 40k isn't sci-fi as such; it has sci-fi trappings, but as its
it
heart,
has sci-fi tropes, doesn't it? And sometimes it descends into sci-fi. I mean, you do get sci-fi concepts coming up when the Mechanicum turn up, and in certain elements of it, but not. No, it's not. It's more that sort of sci-fantasy, isn't
completely.
it? Science fiction.
It's a fantasy setting in space.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I still view a lot of the... and granted, I've not read a lot of the books, and I'm sure some people will get uppity about this, but I do enjoy it, but I still view the 40k overall fiction as being very much a kind of teenage fanficky. You know, it appeals to the edgy teenager in me. This dark and gritty universe where everything is terrible and there is no hope and everything is war. And
and it's totally over the top. Yeah. It's totally extreme, and it is. There's absolutely that element to it. Yeah, there is totally that element to it.
Yeah, but I love it for that. You know, it's completely unabashed. So, but yeah. Where was I going now? Okay. One of the things when I was unemployed, I was looking into is I was reading up on the general fluff and whatnot on the internet and going, oh, this is very interesting and this is kind of familiar. This is now familiar territory to me now. Yeah. This sounds kind of appealing. And then I started looking at the models and thinking, oh man, some of them look pretty good. In particular, it was the armor. I wasn't really interested in the units as the infantry and whatnot. I was mainly interested in the armor, in particular the Imperial stuff, like your various Land Raiders and the Imperial Guards tanks, all of many tanks.
Wow, if you're going for the armor, then they're tailor made for you.
Yeah,
whole armies of tanks, whole armies of tanks. Kind of, if you have to, supported by squishy humans.
Nah. Just the tanks. That was my main interest, to be honest. So even though I wasn't employed at the time, I was kind of scouring eBay looking for basically second-hand ones. Doing that thing of buying badly painted ones people had already customized and whatnot, and thinking, I'll get this whole set of vehicles for super cheap, and then I can strip them and I can repaint them. Because at the time I was also frequenting this forum, I don't know if it still exists, it probably does, called Work in Progress, and it's a modelling forum, and a lot of it was 40k inspired. In particular, again, I obviously frequented the kind of Imperial Guard and that kind of stuff section. So I was getting inspiration from a lot of really bitchin' looking the customs, especially one in particular I can think of, which was just freaking redonkulous. Is this fellow who made? Are you aware of the railway guns that the Nazis made?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
The guy made a 40k one of those in his attic. The basic spine, the basic frame of it was made out of Lego. Because he needed something large and something kind of vaguely solid, and he must have, I think he spent like a year making this thing, and it was insane. And there was a whole kind of fiction around it about the Mechanicus, the servitors, inscribing prayers onto these monstrously huge shells before they're inserted. And I don't think he could get it out of his attic. It was so big. And I never thought for a moment, I'm going to make me one of them. But I was just so inspired. It's like, man, that looks amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is exactly it, Jai. I'm telling you, that's when you were talking about like the prayers being inscribed on the shells and that kind of thing. That just sends shivers up my spine. That is the kind of thing that makes me want to go and get my models right now and start hacking away and sculpting and making something. You know, It's brilliant. And I like you, I am endlessly inspired. If you go onto any of the big forums out there and go onto the modeling section, go onto the work in progress sections, you will find people for whom this is like, it's their principal artistic expression, you know? And what they create is unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable in terms of like the sculpting and the conversions, the customizations. There are people out there who cast their own miniatures, you know? Yeah. The paint, oh man. When I see something like that, it sparks in my mind. It really does. And that's what makes me want to go and start buying ridiculous amounts of miniatures and hacking them up and turning them into armies, you know?
Yeah.
It'll amuse you to know that work in progress still exists. And it is actually what Cool Mini or Not spun out of, it seems.
All right, okay.
Right.
So that's quite cool.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I might be wrong there. It just seems to be that seems to be the case.
They're huge. Yeah.
don't be hipster, Jai. Don't be hipster.
G1
minis.
That's it.
I think you'll find, Jai. I'm really old.
Yes. G2 then.
Yeah, I do. I do distinctly recall you in the first episodes, Adam, kind of tutting away and sighing away there when I and the guest were talking about getting in around second ed, and you were sort of like, "Oh, kids stuff."
John Blanche covers. I was there when Blanche was doing interiors only.
Anyway, so getting back to me, so this is the important thing. I also remember although, actually, I remember one in particular instance where I did buy like a couple of converted... there was one Chaos Land Raider and maybe some other various goblins, but I was unemployed at the time, so I was like, I really shouldn't be spending this money. And so I had the package shipped to my gran. so that I could acquire it stealthily and people wouldn't know that I bought stuff. So I went, because she doesn't live that far away. She's only a 10-minute walk away. So I could, under the guise of going for a visit, I went to go get the models. Obviously, I went there ahead of time to seed the idea. Yeah, I didn't just drop it on her.
Of course.
Yeah.
But that worked out. I think that box is still in my attic. Still not done anything with it, of course.
No.
Because of course not.
No, the curse, isn't it?
Yeah. At one point, I don't know if you can still do this anymore. I think it's kind of fallen out of fashion because the way that Games Workshop's changed their business model. But I remember at the time, it was really, really common for websites and people on eBay as well, like tons and tons of eBay sellers, selling just sprues. It was like the cheapest way to buy stuff was just to buy individual sprues, rather than just buying the whole box. So I had... over the course of, I don't know, some weeks or whatever, I compiled, not through an actual spreadsheet program, but on a notepad, I compiled a spreadsheet of which sprues cost the most and the least different online shops.
That is the most Jai
What was it you were saying
earlier?
Yeah, what was it you were saying earlier, Jai, about like not wanting to be associated with this kind of geekery? That's one of the most geekiest 40Kist things I've ever heard.
Well, I never actually bought anything though, but I like the idea that if the moment came and I wanted to buy something, I could get the best deal.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
I think
the stuff we do for this addiction, honestly, the stuff we do, it is a proper plastic crack addiction, isn't it?
Well, that's nothing. You don't know anything yet. let me tell you. Because I did briefly get into kind of customizing, but not in the way you'd normally think. There was no paint involved. There was, however, a PIC involved. A PIC being a programmable IC. Nowadays, people may be aware of things called Arduinos. Well, the PIC was like the ancestor to the Arduino. It's a single chip with a crystal oscillator for its clock, and a couple of basic components, and that's it. Right. This is something I got into when I was at uni, because my course was on electronics, and one of the projects involved creating an electronic door alarm type thing. Okay. And so it was decided that we were going to do this through a PIC, and I became the programming guy. So I bought myself a PIC programmer, a USB PIC programmer, which I don't think you can get them anymore. Because it grabbed my interest. I was having fun programming for PICs, and then I was looking at the various models, like the vehicles, and I'm thinking, I really want to include LEDs in this, but I don't want to just put LEDs in. That's lame. I'll do something else. And I was also coming across components I hadn't came across before, like surface mount LEDs, which are super, super tiny, and thinking, if I had 3 of these and I put them in a triangle arrangement and then put some kind of dome over them, I could probably program a flashing sequence that would look like one of those rotating hazard lights, and I could put that inside. Cool. I didn't do that. But what I did do, though, is I got myself a Land Raider Crusader, and I was thinking, there has to be a way of getting lights into these Crusader guns. Now these are I think they're now plastic, but back then they weren't plastic. It was white metal. So yeah. And then I also spent a lot of time trying to find another thing, because in order for my plan to work, I had to find an electrically conductive glue, which I found.
Right.
And so basically what I did is I drilled out the barrel and the inside body of each of the twin-linked las guns, bolter guns rather, with a Dremel, and I drilled out a cavity into the kind of curved linkages that connect them to the big box of ammo.
Yeah.
And I drilled a hole from the underside of that into the box of ammo, and holes through... Was there anything else? I think that's it, actually. I think that's it. And so basically what I did, I got LEDs put into each of these twin-link las cannons, where I flipped it at differing to opposite polarities. So what that means is, when you energize them, only one turns on, and then you reverse the polarity, and the other one turns on. Right. And I fed I fed 4 or 3 wires through this arrangement into the body of into the track area. That's what it was of the Crusader, because I figured that I could probably hide this PIC board in the engine compartment, and basically the basic idea is I fed a wire through the linkages, if you like, to wire up a pair of LEDs in each gun, and I used the actual body of the guns themselves as the fourth conductor, because it was metal, and I found a conductive metal glue of some type. It's not very strong, but it worked. And so I programmed a PIC to create a firing sequence of LEDs, but going really, really fast. So I could program a bunch of different sequences, and because it's running faster than the human eye could see, I could rapidly rotate the polarity, going from positive to negative and negative to positive, such that to the human eye it would look like all guns were on at the same time. Or cycles through it so that it would do like a kind of whirligig arrangement of going in a big kind of a square, or going traffic light sequence and all that kind of stuff. And I got to the point where it all worked. I had it running off of 3 AAA batteries, and I figured out I could probably fit all this into the body, and it worked. And then that was it. I didn't do anything else. I didn't actually install the rest of the hardware. I just got it working, and I was satisfied. And I didn't paint it. I'd done all the technical work, and then didn't actually finish it.
Oh no!
Because I got it to the point where it worked. I let it run off of like 3 AA batteries or something, or AAA batteries for like a week constant in my room, and yeah.
Brilliant. You were talking about descending down the rabbit hole earlier. That's deep. Jai, that is well deep. When you're starting to when you really want your miniatures to look like they're firing or something like that, when you're putting LEDs and things, that's deep, man.
That's amazing.
It's very cool.
Never.
It's really cool.
I mean, in the end, I had to settle for having visible wires coming out of the ammo box to go into the sponsons. And I didn't like that idea. But I had to settle for it. Because I actually experimented with one point of, like, see the armature that the gun's all attached to? The vertical piece that has some pegs coming off the side that the actual gun things pivot on. I experimented with the idea of using, like, well, if I was doing it now, I'd probably use copper or something. But I experimented with the idea of having the current run through that somehow, like having sections of it either converted to metal or having like copper sheet on it or something to try and conduct the electricity so that I wouldn't have any visible wires whatsoever. I even tried, I mean, this was doomed to failure because I didn't understand the limitations, but I tried casting the sponsons and that central armature, and not resin because I wasn't really aware of resin at the time. But plaster.
Yeah,
that didn't work.
Right,
that didn't work at all. I cast them, but it's like no, this isn't going to work. So I had to settle for wires sticking out the back, and which was most unsatisfactory.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not so bad. I mean, you can always come up with some justification as to why there are wires sticking out of one of the 40k machines. I mean, hell, most of them now are sculpted with all manner of different bits and pieces flying off of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am going to say...
I just wanted to be fancy, that's what it was.
I am going to say, never in the recording of this show have I wanted there to be a video more than I do right now. Because I'm fairly sure my face was just this beautiful moment of, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
that's amazing, dude. That is absolutely incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Basically, if you're aware of how LEDs work, you can basically get 6 LEDs working with 4 wires. Because you got 1 wire each for each pair, and then a 4th for a common ground. And then if you just by having 2 of them on or off at a time, you can get each individual light to come on. And I figured, okay, well, I can get away with that by just having 1 wire, because I figured out that I could nowadays, if I was to do something like that, I would just use a smaller wire. But I was using wires I'd bought out of Maplin. I could only fit 1 wire through the linkages.
Yeah.
So I figured that I can feed 1 wire each into each of these twin link bolter things, and then if I used the body of the guns as the ground, then that'll work. But then I need to get the LEDs to be actually attached electrically to the ground, to the metal body. So then that's where I had to try and research some kind of electrically conductive glue, which I did eventually find. Wow. I really broke my monitor doing that though. Because I was trying to drill. I can't remember exactly which one it was now, but I didn't have a workbench or nothing. I just had a Dremel tool, and so I was trying to very carefully drill out these white metal bolters, drill out the barrel and all that kind of stuff. And there were a couple of times, and holding it in my hand at the same time, so the thing was getting hotter than the sin.
Yeah.
So, and there was a couple of times where it just went, and it would catch, and whatever the piece was on the end of the drill would just start spinning up and then just fly off.
Yep.
Into a corner of the room. Could have hit me, could have broken my computer monitor or anything else, but I got lucky though.
Yeah, I think sort of modelling related injuries are kind of a rite of passage in this hobby, to be perfectly honest. There aren't that many of us who haven't.
Oh, yeah, I've got scars all over my knuckles and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sliced fingers, bleeding knuckles, that kind of thing. And, I collect Chaos miniatures, so, the amount of times where you leave one on the floor or something and you step on the bastard. And, Chaos miniatures are all spiky. So even picking them up is hazardous.
Actually, said about that, I don't think it actually made it into the show. I think I cut it out. But do you remember a couple of weeks back I was talking about trying to chop a metal scarsnick? Get the head...
I do remember that,
I was telling my dad about it, and my dad mentioned the fact that, I remember that. There was the piece of metal that destroyed the lawnmower. And I looked at him and went, what? He was like, I remember one of your miniatures. It got stuck in the lawnmower underneath the So the blade going up to the lawnmower itself, and got stuck and completely burnt out the lawnmower motor. No, Dad, no, that wasn't that one.
That wasn't me. No.
This hobby, it's the parent's bane in so many ways. It involves glue, it involves blades, it involves lots and lots of money. Yeah, it's the parent's bane.
As I've said for many years, I am convinced that the majority of my ideas came from when I was creating stuff for late night. Late Friday night, no school on a Saturday, up really late, listening to Atlantic 252 till 3 a.m, gluing stuff together, thinking to myself after I finished making it, oh, actually, if I chop that off, I can convert it and it'll look better. I'm convinced all of those ideas came from the fact that I was off my face on polystyrene cement fumes.
Yeah, I think most of us were at that point in our lives, to be perfectly honest, for extended periods as well.
I'm fairly convinced I have destroyed brain cells down to polystyrene cement and superglue.
Yes, I'm fairly certain that significant elements of our personalities were probably shaped by poly cement and various other adhesive chemicals.
I could have been a doctor if it wasn't for this.
I love it.
So after that, things got really nerdy. Because after that is when I became reintroduced to Transformers.
Oh man!
Because it was around my kind of university years that the Dreamwave comics came out. Then I started buying them, and invariably then the idea comes of, what if there's like a Transformer and it turned into a Land Raider? That'd be super fucking boss.
Always wanted to do that.
That'd be ace.
Oh man!
So what I did is around the same time. This program called SketchUp became a thing.
Yeah.
It's a free 3D modeling program, and I decided to 3D model the various parts of like a rhino. Was it a rhino? No, not a rhino. It was a chimera. That's what it was.
Okay.
Into SketchUp, and that worked reasonably well. And then I decided to turn it into a Transformer.
Awesome.
Which considering I didn't really have many Transformers at all, and it was like baby's first Transformer, and I didn't have any experience of design and things like that. I was mainly thinking to myself, I need to make this thing into a custom somehow, so it needs to be fairly simple. I need to be able to make it with Lego parts or Bionicle parts. But in the end, I did, and then eventually I moved on to do and this one wasn't anywhere near as good, but I tried my hand at a kind of Optimus-esque style kind of Land Raider. The kind of inspired by the World War II G.I. Joe versus Transformers designs.
Yes.
Where Prime was a dragon wagon, whatever the official designation is for that. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point where I got started on building the Chimera bot, because although things like 3D printers and whatnot just did not exist back then, just not at all. So effectively what I did is I sliced up the designs for the various parts into like 2D shapes, with the idea that I could build them up using plasticard. Mm-hmm. Just like build up, basically like a 3D printer, but manual 3D printer.
Yeah. So sort of analog, sort of the analog version.
Yeah, and then learning about plastic weld, cement, and all that kind of jazz from that. And then going on from there, learning about the milliput.
Yeah.
And spoilers: this project was never actually completed, unfortunately. But I was deep in, man. I got to the point where I figured, right, well, what's going to be easier, spending hours cutting plasticard and gluing them to make up certain shapes. And in particular, I was thinking about a particular shoulder piece, like the front half of the shoulder joint. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be easier if I had some kind of mold that I could basically mix and force milliput through, and then the result would be the shape I wanted. Mm-hmm. Now this is many years ago, so the idea of having a welder and whatnot that's just pure fantasy. So I ended up getting like a bunch of aluminium angle from B&Q, and it's not JB Weld, but the what would you call it? Epoxy. It's epoxy glue.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I made an aluminium mold of the vague shape that I wanted of the front half of this robot's shoulder joint, and so I mixed up a bunch of milliput with water, and I can't remember what I used as a press, but I basically pushed it through this mold to get the shape I wanted. And it came out like a brick. You know, once it was all solid, because I don't think I used the white fine stuff. It was like the green stuff, not green stuff, but the green coloured milliput. So it was like solid as a rock, man. And then carving it and cutting it and sanding it into shape. And at the end of it, it was like it came out fine. And I thought, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
That was a lot of work to make one part. I'm done now. I proved it in concept that this can work. But bugger that for a game of soldiers.
Quite literally, yeah. Brilliant.
I actually remember, Joy, sitting up with you till late one night, many years ago now, discussing making a Starscream out of a Thunderhawk.
Oh yes, so yeah, that was an idea. I never got off the ground, but yeah.
No.
I had a whole fiction. I had a whole internal fiction about Transformers in the 40k universe.
I remember.
Oh, so cool. Well, you know what, the 40k universe, I mean, it's the Moorcock influence again, isn't it? There is a sort of multiversal element to it. You know, there is the notion of realities rupturing and bleeding together. So you could get away with it. It's like any science fiction universe. You can sort of fan wank that in there if you want, quite easily. Yeah. And I'm sure people have.
Yeah.
Although I do quite like the idea of somebody setting up an orc army, and then you just start putting down like Transformers toys that you've glued to bases.
I can imagine the look on most games, like Games Workshop and Warhammer players' faces if you started doing that.
Hey,
I don't think they'd be.
That was very important to me. I wanted these designs to actually be the exact same size as the official models, which is part of the reason why I 3D modelled the individual official parts into the program, and then used them as the basis. It would have been a lot easier to just upscale them. And if someone was going to do that nowadays, some third party, we're going to do that nowadays. That's probably what they would do. They would just upscale them to make it easier to do. But I don't know. I wanted them to be in vehicle mode. I wanted them to be the exact same size as the official ones.
It's weird to think that probably the only thing stopping anybody from actually doing that is that they're terrified of the GW lawyers. Not the Transformers ones. The GW ones.
Not the GW ones, and with reason. With good reason.
Well, yeah. Although saying that, I think that the GW lawyers have been given a shorter leash these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the days of the hard litigation are gone. Yeah,
I mean the amount of stuff that you can get on Shapeways now is brilliant. You know, as long as it's not these are the Tyranids.
As long as you're not saying like, oh, this is the Primarch Magnus of the Thousand Suns. If you just call him, I don't know, the Illuminator or something like that, you know, some sort of epithet, then that would work. It's fine. They don't seem to mind.
I mean, it's not like that anybody that we know has a ton of CAD models that were stolen from Games Workshop at any point.
No, not at all.
God, I would love a 3D printer. But anyhow.
And of course, in terms of like the rules now, if you wanted to use Transform, like if you did just want to plonk a Transformer down in the 40k, in a game of 40k, you could do it. Just use the Knight Titan rules or something like that, and you'll be fine. Absolutely fine.
One of the two things I've always wanted to do, and Jai's reminded me of how much I've always wanted to do these, is get a remote-controlled car or a remote-controlled tank, and then try and build a Land Raider around it. You take off the shell and then just have a remote-controlled Land Raider, and then halfway through a battle, you just start nudging it forward. What? It's going to move 6 inches.
You could even just not tell your opponent cheat a little bit, couldn't you? You just inch it forward, you know? What was that noise? That hum. What was going on there?
At the very least, I'd like to have it so you could just remotely control the turret so it just turns around every now and again.
Yeah.
I think I just found the folder hidden somewhere that had all the things.
Oh wow!
This is like baby's first Transformer. But
these are cool.
Let me see. Where did I have do I have pictures of the Land Raider one? I don't think I got anywhere close to completing the Land Raider one. I think I only got as far as like a vague outline and completing the arm.
Would you be happy if we shared these photos on the site when the episode goes up?
If you like.
Yeah, I would think it'd be quite cool.
Oh, cool.
Just so people,
Fluffenhammer with a visual element.
just so people could see them, because they're really fun.
Yeah.
So was that the point where you started to come back out then and got into the wonderful world of GoBots?
What do you mean, get out? And then go back into GoBots? So was never not into GoBots.
I'll rephrase then. Is that the point then where the sort of the Warhammer, wanting to play around with the Warhammer world, Warhammer worlds anyhow, started to recede, or did you just keep coming back to these ideas?
No, I think that's when they receded, because Transformers was becoming more of a thing. I found people involved in the Transformers world, and I made other friends, and I moved away from the things I was interested at that point, and Transformers became just more of a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that I was hanging about with or just conversing with didn't really have a huge amount of interest in 40k, so it just kind of fell by the wayside effectively.
Okay.
It does seem to be very common, doesn't it? It does seem that these things they come in ebbs and flows, and there seem to be sort of environmental or cultural influences that spark them again. Something happens. There's some image. There's something that people glimpse in a White Dwarf or online or something, and suddenly they're back in again.
Well, I think that happens with any kind of hobby thing, doesn't it? It's, you do so much of one thing, then eventually you just kind of run out of steam, and you need to take that break. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, something happens, a scent or a smell or a sight, and it reawakens the old passions.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of us came back into the Transformers franchise quite strongly for a good many years.
Good long while, yeah. Very strongly indeed. Yeah. Very strongly. And it seems now that is happening again with Games Workshop, simply because of the culture of the game, the culture of the universes again, the culture of the company, which is something that we can connect to again. It's something that doesn't alienate or even revolt us as it has at times.
If it's something that you're passionate about and it actively tries to engage you, it's almost impossible to not get back into it, to not start playing down the path again.
I mean, there is a seductive quality to it, isn't it? Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I cannot help myself but pay attention to it at the moment, because it is trying so hard. Yeah. It's trying so hard to please us, and doing so much right.
Yes, and that's the beautiful thing.
So much right.
And,
I found a in progress picture of the twin linked bolters.
Oh wow!
The kit from the Land Raider kit.
It's when you see it, you realise how much work that went into drilling through that metal.
And it's when you said, actually, Joyce, when you said drilling through the white metal, my teeth went, it's sort of like, oh, that must have been painful. Because that stuff, I mean, obviously I know why they changed from lead to white metal, the fact that it was terribly poisonous. But that white metal was so brittle and simultaneously really hard.
Yeah.
And very difficult to manipulate. Not a fan.
No. It's always why I've preferred plastics.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I know a lot of, particularly like the old school tabletop wargamers who perhaps came into the Games Workshop stuff from historical wargaming, tend to dislike the plastic quite heavily, because it doesn't have the tactile element that they like. It doesn't have the weight. It doesn't have the feeling, which I totally get. If that's what you like, then absolutely fine. I totally understand. But for my money, I like the plastic because it's just easier to manipulate.
Yes, completely.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to work with.
Yeah, you heat up something in a bit of hot water for 10 minutes and you can readjust somebody's stance. It's that simple. You don't have to do any of the cutting or the shredding.
No, and if you do want to do the cutting and the filing and all that, you can do that too, much easier. You get more dynamic miniatures from plastic. That is definitely the case. You certainly get more of a sense of movement.
You do.
I mean, if you look at the sort of all the miniatures from Games Workshop from around the era when we first certainly when I first came into it, sort of like the late 1980s, early 1990s, the stances of most of, say, the human scale miniatures are pretty much the same.
Yes. Yeah, legs akimbo.
They're pretty much the same. Yeah, holding something across their chests usually. Yes. Or holding something up, like a sword or something like that, and that's it. That's all you get. You compare and contrast that now to, say, the best examples I can think of are the Elder Harlequins. the new Elder Harlequins that are backflipping and jumping over terrain and debris. If you look at the Solitaire now, which is connected to the base not by its feet but by its hand, because it's flipping across this Imperial ruin. It's just incredible what you can do with the miniatures now.
Oh yeah. Well, you look at
in terms of their dynamism.
Look at something like the Lord of Change. You follow the evolution of the Lord of Change, and what you have in the old lead version. I'm talking the old lead version.
Yes.
The thing is, to use a common term, it's a brick. It stands there. It looks like a tabletop. It looks like something that you use to signify something.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It looks like an approximation,
a token,
doesn't
that's the
it?
word I'm after. It looks like a token.
It doesn't look like the actual miniature. It requires imagination, doesn't it?
Yes, a stand-in.
Completely.
And it certainly doesn't evoke what the Lord of Change was in the background.
No, not even back then. There's nothing unsettling or ethereal about it, because you couldn't do it in lead back then.
You just couldn't. No, I mean, it's not any fault on the designer's part. No. It's just the way it is. You just couldn't do it. But now...
Yeah, you look at that new one, and it is...
That miniature is... I say miniature, it's huge. It's enormous, that miniature. And it is stunning.
It is. It really is.
It's probably one of my all-time favourites ever. Yeah. I just got it. I got it in a massive lot, an order that I had not too long ago, and just it's one of those miniatures where you can look at the sprues. You can actually open the box and go through the sprues and just marvel at the amount of detail that they've got into the damn thing.
There's that in the new Nagash. That Nagash upsets me because I don't own it, and one day I will, but it won't be anytime soon.
Nagash was for me was one of the very first of those new style miniatures. Where they were making really big, characterful pieces, but which was so dynamic, where they didn't want them just stood on the base. They wanted them doing something. And to have Nagash elevating on that vortex of spirits is just sublime. It tells you so much about the character. Yeah. And I like that. He's like a little diorama, and I love that. I love
That's exactly it. If I ever got that Nagash, it would never be used for tabletop, because, well, let's face it, if you have Nagash on your army, you're going to win.
You're winning, yeah. I mean, which is how it should be. Yeah. I don't mind that at all. No. I don't mind that
Not at all, but I don't want it to be that obvious. You know, I want to create tactics and things. I don't want to just... I'm Nagash. So...
I mean, one of the fun things I've seen people doing, certainly online, is where they take... One side takes Nagash, and the other side takes an army. And you see what happens, you know? Especially if you're playing sort of an unbound game where he can just summon what he likes.
Yeah, once you get the summoning.
Because he can summon anything from the undead army list.
Yes.
Absolutely anything, including dragons, zombie dragons and
Terrorgeists,
vampires, anything, Terrorgeists, anything. Anything he likes, he can summon. So even if he doesn't have an army supporting him at the beginning, he soon will.
Oh, he's a monster. He really is.
Yeah, he is. But he's a god. He's a living, walking god.
Have you ever read the 1D4chan description of Nagash?
I haven't, no, but I'm sure it's...
I'm not going to go into what it is because I don't want to spoil it, but just go through it, and when you realise the word that they keep using again and again and again to describe him, it's one of those things where it gets stuck in your head, and every time he turns up, you find yourself wanting to say those words, even though you know that it's not the right words to use in good company. But it's really good. I recommend the Nagash entry for 1D4chan. In fact, I just recommend 1D4chan. It's nice and fun.
It is. It's amusing. The 40k stuff is very amusing.
Yeah. So, with that being said then, shall we skip on to some spotlights?
Yeah, why not?
So, who should go first? Jai, being the guest, you get to pick. Is it going to be me, or is it going to be George?
We'll do you.
Okay. All right, then. So, in the past, I have gone through multiple different, really old Hammer stuff. I've described Inquisitor Jacques Draco. I've gone through Drachenfels himself. I've gone through Zotes. I'm going to update it a little bit now. I'm going to go a little bit into the future. Am I going into the present? No. No. Because you see, I want to talk to you about the Gretchen Revolutionary Committee. This takes a little bit of background that we need to go through first. Now, does anyone remember the planet Angelus?
No.
The planet
Not off the top
The
of my
planet
head.
Angelus is a very special planet because something very odd happened to Angelus. That odd thing being 2 giant cruisers of orcs in the middle of a war crashed into it, crashing into it in such a way that it destroyed all of the natural ecosystem. The orcs came out and they were blinking in the sunlight and they thought to themselves, "Ooh, what is this place?" And they decided that they had to get back to the war as soon as possible. So all of their mech boys, all of their different guys that they had to build things, all the mech boys, the techs, the engineers, the closest thing.
Going.
Say again?
I think I see where this is going.
Okay. Anybody who had any orc that had any kind of idea of what to do, they started trying to rebuild the ships. The problem is that these mech boys did not talk to each other about anything, and so they were all building different ships. One team wasn't even building a ship. It was building some kind of elevator system that was going to throw orcs into space. another set.
One of my favourite things.
That were actually just building a temple. They realised after a couple of 100 years that this wasn't working and they weren't building a ship. And what they had was 2 very large icons. One to Gork, one to Mork. One was destroyed when it tried to take off and didn't. Exploded. Putting radiation all over the place. Which wasn't very good for the remaining Imperials who were underneath the ship at the time, who were digging through it because this world of Angelus might have been a Necron tomb world. They all got mutated quite badly.
This is the most orky story I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, don't worry, we're getting up to the good bits. So this one remaining icon was left, and it was a fight. Was it a icon to Gork or an icon to Mork? And thus began the war of Gorka Morka.
Awesome stuff.
This went on for quite some time. The muties came out of their tunnels. There was other Imperials that had become primitive tribes. They were known as diggers. And this war went on and on and on. And they fought and they fought. Until at last, some tribes managed to get enough parts together to build their spaceship. Then, any orc who had proved themselves to be orky got a tag. And that tag allowed them to get off Gorka Morka, off Angelus, and get back to the Warg. However, Gretchins, the Grots, they cannot have tags, and they were not allowed to get off Gorka Morka. This, understandably, upset the Grots, so they went on strike. There was a moment where leaders of each community went to meet and discuss their terms. So all the Orc leaders and all the Grot leaders in Mechtown they met up, they lined up opposite each other, and the leaders marched forward. However, the Orcs didn't think much of the Grots and opened fire, shooting them, killing their leaders. The Grots did not like this and ran forwards. They may have been destroyed, they may have been beaten off, and they returned to a little place that they renamed Skid Row. It is here that they formed Da Committee, a group of Gretchen who led the Ragtag Revolution. They campaigned for equal heights between Orcs and Grots. This is just madness. It's so good.
It's awesome. I love it.
These little teams went around attacking Orc warbands, stealing, trying to get as much technology off them, trying to cause havoc everywhere. And the Orcs were thinking, well, what is this? This is stupid. They're only Grots. And, they went out to try and purge Skid Row of the Gretchen. None of these warbands were ever seen again. Because these warbands down in Skid Row came across what the Gretchen had found. The Gretchen had found all of the tech that the Imperials had left behind before becoming these primitive tribes. So what you have is these Orcs on their little war buggies and their bikes going in against Gretchens in a Lehman Russ.
That's the best image ever.
It's beautiful. So
I want to see actual artwork of that.
Oh, I will dig some out for you. It's beautiful.
Brilliant.
You had things like the Commandos, led by some of the greatest guys ever. My favourite hero of the committee is the Red Gobbo.
The Red Gobbo, yes, I remember that.
Because the Gretchens became communist.
Love it.
And it's communist with a K.
Of course it is.
Oh, good.
Of course.
So these guys, they were shooting away with all these giant things. They had super sneaky commando teams and things. They had like ranks upon ranks upon ranks of big guns. Eventually, most of the orcs left Gorka Morka, leaving these guys by themselves. And no one knows what's happened to the committee since then. All that we know is that these guys have been sitting way out there on Angeles, building all sorts of weird stuff, and eventually they have to leave the planet.
Awesome.
And I am hoping against all hope that out there they still exist, even now in the age of the Dark Imperium, that these guys are about to make their reappearance, because it would be beautiful.
Awesome. I was going to ask, actually, Adam, because I remember the game. I remember the game Gorka Morka, and it was big, wasn't it? It was quite a significant game they released.
It was, yeah.
Was it ever tied up? Did the orcs and the Gretchen and whatnot ever get off Gorka Morka?
Sort of, yeah. There's a couple of bits of fiction kicking around that they have the thing about the tags and whatnot, and how they got off Gorka Morka when the ship was built, and that's where the Red Committee stuff comes from. This is like the last days of Gorka Morka. And there was a little PC game, I think, as well, that came out that gave a little bit of fiction into it as well.
Right.
So, yeah, these guys exist. These guys are out there. And Gorka Morka is pretty much empty of orcs. Now, that doesn't quite work with how the orcs got retconned in the early 2000s, being a fungus, as they are now. Because anything that's green skin will... When it dies, it releases the spores, and the spores create the new ecosystem. So you've got squigs as food, then the Gretchen as the lower caste, then finally the orcs start to appear out of the spores. But I love the idea that there's a planet out there that's just Gretchen.
Just Gretchen. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Around there. I even quite like the idea that they'll probably still have the squigs, but no actual orcs. Is cool.
No actual orcs, yeah.
I mean,
that is very cool.
Some of the artwork and stuff for them has like it's like I'm trying to think how to describe it, like a heavy lasgun on treads with orc heads hanging off it, and just this Gretchen hanging on for dear life if it's going down a hill. It's it's really really silly.
It's one of those rare areas, isn't it, where you get a little bit of a sense of humour in the 40k universe, just a little bit of leavening.
Yeah.
Which it kind of needs. It does kind of need, because it is so, as Jai was saying earlier, it's so relentlessly grimdark in almost every other aspect. A tiny little bit of humour does not hurt.
No, definitely not. But this kind of works for me in the same way that... have you ever read 13 Hours?
No.
Right, 13 Hours is the story of an Imperial Guard detachment that accidentally got sent to the wrong planet. 13 hours. Nobody wants to know the name of new guys until 13 hours has passed. Because if you've survived 13 hours, then you are worth knowing the name of.
Got you, yeah. I like that.
It's got this real sense of humour. It's almost Blackadder-ish at times, where it goes from this guy who's in this horrible, horrible situation, and he's terrified, and then it keeps cutting back to like the higher-ups who are in their nice safe towers, and the stupid decisions they're making, and...
So it's a kind of Blackadder goes forth situation.
I mean, the reason that they landed on the wrong planet is that one of the navigators forgot to carry the wand.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It's a great book, and I recommend it. But it's that kind of humour that I quite enjoy, that it comes with the committee. I mean, there's... I'm trying to remember his name. There's a guy. There's an orc. A Gretchen. Captain Skigsqueam. Right? And he appears to have... I don't know if this is an official one or if it's a custom that someone's made. I'm looking at the custom now. I'm looking at the miniature now. And he's basically a miniature Yarrick.
So it's a Gretchen dressed up as Commissar Yarrick.
He's got the hat, but the hat's got a little star on it because they are communist. It's got a sort of gun on one arm, and then it's got this really crappy power claw on the other.
Brilliant. I hope there's an official miniature of that.
I'm going to have to check to see if he's official, because I've only just seen the miniature now.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
that is absolute brilliance. I love it.
So that's my pick. I had to talk about the committee.
I can see why you did. That's brilliant. And that took me right back, because that was... I remember when Gorka Morka came out, that was when I was really well into the hobby.
Yeah.
You know, that was when I was really obsessive about it. And I remember Gorka Morka featured in like so many White Dwarf issues, like front and center. It even drowned out the likes of 40k for a brief period.
It did. It actually... I mean, it went on for so long. I mean, this was out for like 18 months, and it got continuous support for 18 months. And
It did. New miniatures, new races, new armies, and there were battle reports.
There were, yeah.
I remember there was one big 4-way battle report in one of the White Dwarfs and Gorka Morka, and it was really good. It was loads of fun.
I've just sent you a picture so you can see what it looks like, what the committee looks like.
I love that the turrets on the tanks are very much kind of a Russian KV2 or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they are.
Loves it.
And this is one of those things where, God damn it, I don't need to want to build another army up.
God, stop it. Stop it. Having that way too much recently.
Yeah, but look at it. How cool is that?
Way too much. Especially after reading the index books, I can tell you, because those army lists are so fun.
Yeah.
You kind of want to put armies together from them.
I really want to continue the story of the Grot Revolution and just have all of this, just all of these Russian-style tanks and Gretchen everywhere.
It's not outside the realms of possibility.
No, not at all.
Given the new nature of Games Workshop and what they have dragged out of the past already, it is totally not outside the realms of possibility there'd be a new Gorka Morka.
No, I think Gorka Morka is something that's going to happen. It won't be called Gorka Morka. I think it'll be something else.
Yeah, but it'll be Gorka Morka.
In the same way that
in
the same way that thing that came out earlier on in the year was Necromunda. It was
but it isn't.
It's not Necromunda, but it is.
No, it so is.
So yeah, that's my version.
That was awesome.
Do you want to go next, George, or do you want to go, Jai?
I think I'll go, because I don't have a kind of definitive topic quite the way that you guys do, because I don't. My knowledge is still very much kind of surface level.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about one of the elements of the 40k fiction, which still tickles me to this day, and is part of the thing that drew me to it. Aside from all the kind of doom and gloom, kind of the kind of Lovecraftian elements, there's one. I'm just going to pick out one particular element, because there's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of in-universe fluffy mechanical systems within the lore that I enjoy, like the things like the creation of the gods themselves. How like demons and gods are all the creation of the mental energies of psychic beings and all that kind of stuff. All
the
really,
sort of
really
metaphysics.
Good.
It's cool, isn't it?
I like all that stuff. But the one thing which I always come back to is about the Imperium's relationship with their technology.
Oh yeah,
and it amuses me no end. Because I always like the well, this is something that we actually engage in the real world even now. This idea that things were always better in the past. The humanity had all this advanced technology in the past, and so much of it's been lost now because we're morons. And we've only basically gleaned a fraction of it. I was actually reading an article just today about how we still haven't learned to match Roman concrete. Roman concrete is so much better than the current concrete. It's not even a joke.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Just beginning to learn why that is.
That's amazing.
It is. It's totally amazing. But the thing in particular which always tickles me about 40k technology is it's just the nonsense anthropomorphization of technology.
Yeah,
the machine spirits.
Yeah.
And this is something you can see. We all do. Like right now, we all do it. We all anthropomorphize our pieces of electrical equipment that don't always work properly. Your computer or your car are prime examples. Someone may have a dodgy car where you're begging it to turn over or for its engine not to sputter out, and like you've learned in the same way that the animals learn through pattern recognition to associate certain things with results. You've learned that if you kind of stand on one leg and spin around and touch your nose with one hand and then give the door of your car a swift kick, that it'll behave.
Yeah, it's the origins of superstition, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what it is. Just from experience, you've come to associate these things, and therefore that must be it. That must be the trick. Yeah. I remember in particular reading through. I don't know if it was an official piece of fiction or if it was just like a footnote. It was a description of the startup sequence for like a tank.
Yeah.
You obviously know what I'm talking about then.
Definitely.
It's this long, laborious explanation of how you have to apply the sacred oils. Do all sorts of incantations. To try and coax the machine spirit into life.
Yeah.
And if all else fails, hit the big red button that says start.
Yeah. It's brilliant, isn't it? I love that element of the 40k universe. Love it.
It was one of the things that always upsets me about the squats vanishing out of 40k is that there's always this really fun juxtaposition between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Imperial Forces and their coaxing of spirits into the machines. And over here you've got a squat with a hammer going, no, you just hit it, mate.
You just hit it,
hit it, it'll be fine.
You make it work, yeah.
I
mean, the other fun thing, of course, is that you have in the 40k universe, you have that element, which is largely a matter of superstition. Although some of the machine spirits do actually exist, they're actually AIs.
Yes.
And then you have the chaos forces, where the machine spirits are actually literally true.
Yeah, demons.
Where you've got machines infested by demons that do actually require placations and sacrifices in order to work. Mm-hmm. The manifestation of the superstition in reality, which is a very dark notion. I really like that.
It is quite fun that the enemy are the ones who are doing it right, whilst the good guys, for want of a better term, because they're not actually good guys.
They're not. They're genetically engineered space Nazis. Is what they are.
Yeah. They're the ones who've got this ritualistic behaviour that doesn't actually need to exist.
No, it doesn't actually do anything. No,
I do love that. It's fantastic.
It is brilliant, isn't it? But what I like is the fact that the chaos forces, the sort of bad guys in inverted commas, they make it true.
Yes,
they make it true by their belief, and I mean, it's referring back to the metaphysics that Jai was talking about earlier. Where in this universe, belief and faith and passions have physical weight. I love that. They're parts of the mechanics of this universe.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I particularly like how the Imperium's and the Orcs' views of technology are just so diametrically opposed. Here's the Imperium, who have all these beliefs about how the technology works, and they're all wrong. And yet the Orcs' technology works because they believe.
Because they believe in it.
Part of me wants there to be some kind of like a side story about how the only reason why the Emperor is still alive is because the Orcs think he's alive.
Oh, that'd be so cool. That would be brilliant. Just a throwaway line in the Orc Codex referring to that would be the best thing ever.
Hey, you know something? That could work. Because that's why the Beast existed, isn't it? The 12 Orcs that were the Beast. Because they were basically the Orc race had to create Primarchs in order to fight back, so they created the Beast. It's one of those things that happened because it needed to happen. It wasn't. It wasn't a load of mech boys and surgeons in like a lab trying to build things. It's the race produced these creatures because they needed them at that point. So the idea of the Orc race needs to have something to fight, so it believes in the Emperor enough to keep him alive.
That is awesome. Yeah, I would be so happy if that turned out to be the case.
Because the Emperor would be like the ultimate big thing that the Orcs can go and fight.
Yeah,
it's like you've got characters like Yarrick that the Orcs are aware of and respect and fear, and so if he's a badass, his god has to be even more of a badass.
He does.
We totally need to go and fight that.
Yeah, that actually makes a hell of a lot of sense. That makes a hell of a lot of sense within universe.
You've reminded me of something here, and I'm not going to go into it too much because I think it's one that I could possibly do in the future. But do you know of Tusker?
I don't think so.
Tusker,
ringing bells.
Tusker is an orc who is my favourite 40k orc. He's even better than Ghazghkull Thraka. Okay? Ooh. And this is purely because he killed everything in a system. Right? He just worked his way through. It was like a low system. There wasn't much in it. But he went from planet to planet with his horde and he killed everything. And he believed that if he didn't find anything else to kill, he himself would start to dissipate. He wouldn't exist anymore.
Right,
he
survives
on his achievements. It's a very orky way of thinking. If you're not fighting something, then you don't exist.
You may as well not exist.
So what does he do? He turns his entire warg round and flies it into the Eye of Terror.
That's the way of doing it. Yeah, why not?
On a moon surrounding Khorne's palace, proceeds to work his way through and kills the majority of the demons on the moon.
Awesome.
Khorne sees this and takes a little bit of an interest. So every time Tusker dies, Khorne resurrects him from the point he lay. Right. So if he dies in the morning, by night time he's up again and he's fighting again.
He's up again, yeah. Because Khorne likes him.
Yep. Tusker and his entire army, because of this belief that they had to kill stuff, are now fighting at the foot of Khorne's throne.
Brilliance. So Khorne, they're basically Khorne's place.
Yeah, he's just really enjoying watching them every time he falls.
He's just amused by them. Brilliant.
Now, what happens when an orc keeps fighting?
He gets bigger.
He's apparently big enough nowadays to put his hand around a bloodthirster's face.
Wow.
He's massive.
So, he is actually a more powerful orc than Thraka, then.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the...
wow, that's so cool.
He doesn't have the cunning to be able to come out. So I quite like the...
No.
Yeah, he can't do tactics, he just wants to hit things. But I love the...
It's no wonder Khorne likes him.
It's like, this guy's just a mass murder machine, go on. And you come.
So
I like the idea that you're saying there, Jai, of the orcs having enough belief to be able to do something like keep the Emperor alive. When you've got this guy whose belief took him to the Eye of Terror and now he can't die.
Not only to the Eye of Terror, but to the foot of Khorne's throne. I mean, that's deep in the warp. That's beyond the Eye of Terror. That's like a place that most of Khorne's faithful never get.
But he's fought his way there because Khorne won't let him die.
Yeah, that's great. That's absolutely brilliant.
It's wonderful. Yes, sorry for that aside. You just reminded me of it.
No, it's brilliant. It's absolute brilliance. I'm loving it. Loving it. It's what this podcast is about.
It just goes to show this universe is so immutable. You can basically do anything.
Oh yeah.
And it incorporates anything and everything as well. I mean, we've talked before about how it is just a grab bag of just so many influences, some of which are really subtle as well. I mean, if you read certain aspects of the background, you'll find influence from poets and from established writers and all sorts of things, ancient mythologies, so much.
Well,
Brilliant.
How many times is Tenebrae being used in 40k? It's quite a lot,
It's quite a lot, yeah. And it's getting better. It's because if you read the Horus Heresy books, the writers, I mean the good writers of the Black Library, they put so many literary allusions and allegories in their work. It's unbelievable. And there are, as I mentioned before, there are these through lines. There are these literary through lines, like in the books about the Emperor's Children. There's references to Oscar Wilde for some reason, all the way through.
So weird.
Books about. Yeah, I know, it's great. The books about the Word Bearers, there are references to Blake. The books about the Thousand Sons, there are references to occultism, like actually established occultism. Brilliant. Absolute brilliance. I love it.
And I think the coolest thing from what you were saying before about how the technology works is that every race has a very set, designated way to work technology. The Imperium has the pray to the things. It's even taught to the Imperial Guard, isn't it? Pray with your rifle.
Yeah. Even the least bit of technology you're supposed to pray to. You're supposed to. There are imprecations you're supposed to make to it. So basically, things like toasters and stuff like that. Your razor. you otherwise it's going to nick you, or it's going to short or something like that. You're supposed to pray to it.
There is a little bit, isn't there? I can't remember which book it's in, and I can't remember the name of the people. The guys that the Emperor sent out as basically reporters.
Oh, the
Rememberers.
The
yes.
Remembrances.
I remember reading a bit where there was a guy who he prayed to it, basically what was his camera every morning, because he wanted it to always look in the right direction to get the best photos, the best vids and whatnot. And that's something I quite liked.
It's cool, isn't it?
Just even praying to it for your own selfish needs is something that happens. It's very human, and I like that.
It's very human, and it shows you. I mean, it's a nice little reference certainly in that period of the Imperium, like the early days, that the Emperor is destined to fail.
Yeah.
In terms of his secularism, anyway, he's destined to fail because it's human nature he's fighting against. It's human nature he's trying to change, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, you can't change human nature, especially not in a single lifetime, even one as long as the Emperor's.
No, and he's bloody long as well. It's been around a long, long time as the Emperor. I mean, there are references in the books to like the historical things he's been involved with. One of the ones I really liked is that I think it's mentioned in Legion, is that he has been lots of historical figures.
Yes.
The Emperor. One of them is Saint George. He was Saint George, the Emperor. One of the theories was that he may have actually been like established messiahs and whatnot, like Christ, but the Emperor says he wasn't Christ, but he was there.
Yeah.
He was present.
He's been around since the late Stone Age, hasn't he? That's the idea.
Yeah, he's been around for a very long time. Since sort of the dawn of anything approaching human civilization, he's been around.
Not sure how I feel about that. I always prefer the idea of the Emperor just being this unknowable.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if you look at like the Realms of Chaos books, like the Lost and the Damned book, that spells out what the Emperor is in really explicit detail. Really explicit detail. It tells you exactly what he is. I'm not sure whether that background is still true.
I don't think so.
Or not.
I think that's been retconned at this point.
I think it has. I think now what they've actually reintroduced is a bit more mystery to him.
Yes.
Because there are certain references in the Horus Heresy books that make him out to be something way beyond what he advertises himself as.
Yeah.
On what people believe him to be.
A giant dick. Because that's all
whatever
he is.
else he happens to be, he is definitely a giant dick. There is no contention about that whatsoever.
To go back to something you were saying there, Jai, about we're talking about the different races having the different things and how the orc stuff works because they believe it works. Which, when you look at how an orc Hulk looks, everyone on that should be dead. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it should not work. It should hit.
But then you've got stuff like the Necrons and their technology being everything that they are. But their technology is all built around being a prison. And stuff like that. Then you go right the way out to the Tyranids, and their technology is fleshy and squidgy.
Yes, they're biology.
Yeah, it's biological,
And it's an interesting way of coming into the races. How does their technology work? And it's not one of...
I mean, it's one of the things I love about the Eldar.
Yeah, the Wraith,
the fact that,
Wraithbone.
Yeah, their technology is not even... It's not what we would call technology as such. It's more a kind of... almost a kind of botany in a weird kind of way. It's grown. It's not sculpted or shaped. It's grown psychically. Which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's shaped and sculpted by the Bone Singers. So beautiful, brilliant concept.
Yeah, it's cool. That's a really nice one, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Really, really cool. And I think, you know what, I think this could be one of the special episodes, to be honest, Adam, about the technology and the various races' relationships.
Yeah,
I
think so. I think you've opened up a very interesting door here, Joy. Yeah, I like that. Is there anything else you want to go into about the technology?
No, not especially. No, I don't think so. I think it's time we let George give us what.
Okie dokie, no worries.
So everyone, sit back and get ready because it's George's story time, and
it's a fun one this evening. It's a fun one. I was reading. Do you either of you guys remember the Liber Chaotica?
Yes.
The Liber Chaotica were they were and remain the quintessential books about the nature of chaos and the nature of the warp. They are fantastic, but incredibly rare books that were published in the early 2000s, I believe, originally.
Yes, be about that, aye.
Yes, early 2000s, that explore not only the individual chaos powers and their demons, and they do so in the most explicit and exquisite detail, and they go much further than any of the other background is able to, given the demographics that they're being aimed at. If you're the kind of person like me who likes the explicit horror of these subjects and likes their Slaanesh stuff, for example, to go the whole hog, to be entirely explicit and lewd and deeply unpleasant, these are the books you want to get. These are some of the few books that the Black Library have published that have an age certificate on them, or at least a recommended age. They are beautiful. They talk about the metaphysics of chaos. They talk about the nature of the warp. They explore what demons are and how they function. And they go so deep into this subject. If you have an interest in the metaphysics of this universe, you need to read them. Now, one of my favorites of the whole lot is the Liber Chaotica Nurgle. The Liber Chaotica Nurgle goes into some of the deepest, most psychologically detailed explanations of why mortal creatures would be attracted to worshipping what is essentially a god of despair and disease and death. It seems to be insanity, doesn't it? It seems to be antithetical to good sense. And what it explains is that he is not just a god of despair, he's also a god of alleviation, a god of finding meaning and joy and poetry in one's condition, regardless of whatever it is. So he provides his followers the means of finding meaning in their states of disgrace, of being not only satisfied in it, but eventually coming to find joy in it. And that's a very, very dark and wonderful thing. And one of the elements of the Liber Chaotica Nurgle that I like the most is probably one of my favorite elements of all the background in either the fantasy setting or the 40k setting, and that is one of Nurgle's creations. It's a disease, where his ultimate creation, which is called Nurgle's Rot. Mm-hmm. Now, what you need to know about Grandpappy Nurgle, Grandfather Nurgle, is that he is tirelessly enthusiastic and obsessive about his work. He enjoys what he does, and he is endlessly inspired. There are descriptions in the Liber Chaotica Nurgle of Nurgle in his vast manse, his manor, which is at the heart of the Garden of Nurgle. And it's a manor that is impossible to describe in mortal or human terms, because not only is it hideously decrepit and seeping and fungus-strewn, it's immense enough to encapsulate all the nations that have ever existed on the Earth in humanity, and probably amongst all the sentient species in the universe ever. Its dimensions are lunatic. And deep within the heart of that manse, Nurgle, in his kitchen, of all things, he has a kitchen, by all accounts, and has a very, very big cauldron in it. And what he does is he likes to sit in his kitchen, and whilst he's singing to himself his little nursery rhymes and probably gobbling up one of his nurglings in a moment of impulsive peckishness, he likes to create lovely concoctions, new diseases that he inflicts upon the mortal universe. And thus far, the pinnacle of all of his creations, the most beloved, the one that he's most proud of, and that he has never, ever bettered, is Nurgle's Rot. And Nurgle's Rot is the most hideous, disgusting disease imaginable. It's the most hideous and disgusting because it's not just a disease. It's actually demonic. It's actually a sentient disease, part warp-born, part material, part actually virulent. And when it infests a mortal, and it can infest very, very easily, it's the most toxic, virulent disease ever created, ever spawned. When it infects a mortal host, it afflicts them with the symptoms of every disease imaginable. So if you can imagine every cancer, every skin disease, every leprosy, every sexual disease, all at once, every symptom, but it doesn't let you die. it doesn't kill you, because the whole thing with Nurgle is not death, it's not submission. He's not interested in that. It's about endurance. He's not interested in automatic surrender, in those who will just give up and die. That's actually more of a Slaneshi thing, that surrender to automatic submission. What Nurgle appreciates are those that endure, that can suffer the worst conditions, the ultimate disgraces, and still cling to life. So the sufferers of Nurgle's Rot can endure for months, even years at a time, in states of the most unbelievable pain, the most exquisite agony. And Nurgle's Rot doesn't just infest the body, it also infests the mind and the spirit, the soul as well. It twists the perceptions of those that suffer from it. Not only do they often go insane, because it reduces their brains to absolute muck, but it also gives them fevered visions and hallucinations of Nurgle's Garden, of the realm of chaos. They start to see things that no mortal should ever see, and they start to know things no mortal should ever know. And it also starts to gift them with a certain semblance of Nurgle's own sense of humour and his appreciation for the condition. It's a very, very, very peculiar thing, because it relates to Nurgle's demonic creations. Now, think about demons. The lesser demons are the Chaos Gods, the other Chaos Gods anyway. They're all smaller portions of that Chaos God. For a Chaos God to create a demon, they take a portion of their own energies and invest it with a certain animus, a certain sentience, but it is still part of that Chaos God. And they can be just as easily uncreated on a whim. And that energy just returns to the Chaos God and can be reformed as and when they like. Plague Bearers, the lesser demons of Nurgle, the sort of foot soldiers of Nurgle, are sort of different. They are similar in the sense that they're still part of Nurgle. They cannot exist without him. They are symbiotically linked to him. But they're created in a very different manner. They are not created by Nurgle taking a part of himself and sculpting it into the demon. The mortal sufferers of Nurgle's Rot, as the disease progresses, their soul slowly leaches away. It seeps away into Nurgle's Garden, and as the sufferer of the disease progresses, one of the trees in Nurgle's Garden will start to fruit. A hideous sort of tumescent fleshy sac will start to swell from one of its boughs, and inside is the sort of maggoty core of a nascent plague bearer. It's the mortal's own soul. As their perceptions are changing, as they are being corrupted and transformed and reborn in the realm of chaos as one of Nurgle's plague bearers. And as they reach the later stages of the disease, those that actually survive, they actually start to physically resemble a plague bearer. Their stomach bloats, their intestines start to burst through ruptures in their skin. They even start, you know how a plague bearer is a cyclopean? Yes. Their eyes will start to slowly merge together to form a single orb. And in the very last stages of the disease, the very few that actually endure it and survive, a horn bursts through their skull, just like the single horn on the plague bearers. And that's when the mortal body will expire and the fruit will fall down into the filth and the sludge of Nurgle's Garden, and the new plague bearer will rise. They are some of the most hideous, horrific entities, I think, in either the AOS realms or the 40k universe, because they're not just demons. They're actually mortals. They're actually human beings that have been so tormented, so distorted, so tortured that they have become demons.
That's amazing. I never knew that.
I love it. Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? That's how new plague bearers are created.
Good grief. It's
so cool.
The coolest thing about all that, of course, is the fact that good old Pappy Nurgle will love his plague bearers like
absolutely.
children.
He absolutely adores his plague bearers. Well, here's what's fun about the plague bearers, though. They are not like the Great Unclean Ones, and they are not like the Beasts of Nurgle. You know how they represent the more the happier elements of Nurgle? You know, they're quite celebratory and they're jocular. The plague bearers are not like that. They represent an entirely other aspect of Nurgle. They represent the despair. And so they are maudlin, they are obsessive. The singular eye, like all aspects of demons, if you actually sit and look at the way demons are shaped and the aspects of their forms, every element of them is symbolic because they are metaphor made flesh. They're metaphor made into actual entities. The Cyclopean eye represents their myopia and their single-mindedness and the narrowness of their focus. They're also called Nurgle's Tallymen because they have a very particular task, which is they have this obsessive compulsion to count everything. So when plague bearers go around the Garden of Nurgle trying to count and catalogue everything.
Wow.
The diseases, the new flowers, the weeds, the trees, the flies in the air, one another. They try to count one another, and it's an impossible task because, of course, new Nurglings are being born all the time.
Yeah.
New parasites and diseases are always coming about. It's an impossible task, but they keep doing it. What they represent, metaphorically, is the human need to impose meaning and order on a world that defies it.
Right.
And in that, they are despair. It's so brilliant. I love that aspect of the Plague Bearers. I absolutely love it. They're one of the most mythological demons in the Chaos Pantheons in that regard.
It's until Age of Sigmar hit, I got back in. Back in the day when I originally played, I never really got Nurgle. And I know I've talked about this before, but since Age of Sigmar hit and Nurgle got a little bit of love and attention, I finally understood what it is about Nurgle that people like, the jovial nature of Pappy Nurgle himself, the fact that he's not like Khorne. He's not an element that exists to conquer and to kill and to destroy. He is this happy-go-lucky, loving father figure who will literally do anything for his children that he can do to make them happy. So to understand that
absolutely,
part of that includes creating these very secular people, not people, but secular beings in his garden that exist to be the despair, to show how bad it can get, and then everything else can be much happier for it.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? The funny thing is, all of the Chaos Gods have a single emotion that is their core. Yeah. They have an emotion that is their ultimate drive. And all the other elements are sort of elaborations of that core emotion. And Nurgle's is despair. Yeah. Nurgle's is despair. He is the god born of despair, which is one of the things that makes him so interesting and so complex, because as the writer of the Liber Chaotica Nurgle points out, and he is an actual character, I mean, it's not just a dry recitation of fluff. That's one of the more interesting things about the Liber Chaotica. It's actually written by a guy in the old world, as it was, a priest of Sigmar called Richter Kreis, who slowly goes mad. Yeah.
the same Richter Kreis that saw the March of Fortress.
Yes, that's right. The same guy.
Brilliant.
The same guy. Yeah. He's been tasked with the Church of Sigmar with researching these forbidden concepts, the gods of chaos, and penning the ultimate tome on them, in the interest of combating them, of course. But as he's writing the books, he's having visions and he's having these odd episodes. He starts to hallucinate while he's writing the Liber Chaotica Nurgle. He starts to see things like flies and seepages across the pages. Eventually he starts to see plague bearers. He starts to see spectral plague bearers in his study, counting all the books and counting all the floorboards and the knots in the floorboards. It's absolutely brilliant. And when the forces of Nurgle march to war, you not only get the drone of flies, you also get the drone of the plague bearers' voices as they count.
Oh, wow.
And it's a sound that can actually make people ill. It can make them vomit. It can make them lose control of their bowels. It can even make organs rupture and things like that.
So I'm thinking of the it being akin to the sound of the Sandmerks from Flight of Dragons.
Yes, it's very, very, very much that. That's how I'd imagine it is, yeah. But with more pus. That's
more
what
bubbles.
I imagine, you know? Yeah. It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's one of the elements of Nurgle that I find really attractive. But as Kleist points out, he goes very far trying to explain why mortal creatures would be attracted to Nurgle. As he says, on the face of it, it's anathema to sanity. that you would worship a creature of despair. You would worship a manifestation of everything that's so negative. But the thing about Nurgle is, not only is he attractive, but he gets people at a point where they have no choice.
Yeah.
Where they will follow anything. They will call out to anything that will give them relief, that will give them meaning. He is the god of the despairing, and he will give it to them. That's the thing. It's not a delusion. It begins as a delusion, but it becomes truth. He starts to twist their perceptions very early on, so that states of being that might have appeared to be disgraceful and hideous and wretched actually start to become beautiful to them.
And so once they start to see the change and the difference in the metamorphosis in the disease, they can accept the disease, and they become much more comfortable with it as it goes along.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's, I think.
And he's not just despair, he is defiance in the face of it. So he's also denialism. He's actually a god of neurosis in that regard. He is the god of denialism.
Well, that's the thing, is that you can't have despair without ever knowing joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need the contrast, and that's what he provides.
That's fantastic.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I love it. That's one of the elements of the background I absolutely love. And if you can, the Liber Chaotica are very hard to get a hold of now. And they're very expensive, especially if you get the one that I've got, which is the big hardback one. But they are worth picking up.
Did they not?
Because they tell you everything.
Did they not get a reprint not long back?
They did briefly, but it's still difficult to get a hold of.
It's a shame.
And it's stunning, honestly. It's a stunning book. It tells you everything you need to know about chaos and the realm of chaos, the way, the mechanics and metaphysics of chaos and how they relate to mortal creatures. It's wonderful. It is absolutely, it's endlessly fascinating. And not only that, the books are fun.
Yeah.
The books are really fun. Amongst the background, you've got handwritten scrawls where Richter Kleiss had like an episode, and he's written out all this bizarre poetry and prophecy. The Liber Chaotica Zeech is absolutely fantastic because there are ciphers in it. It's so cool. It's so cool.
That's incredible. That's actually incredible. I need to find a way of getting hold of that, I think.
There are, and these are impossible to get a hold of now. There were even special editions, limited editions of those books released that had really weird covers. So the Khorne one was bound in brass.
Oh, wow.
And the Nurgle one was sort of bound in rotted flesh, and the Zeech one, I think, was mirrored. And the Slaanesh one was leather.
Oh, God.
They are impossible to get a hold of for a decent price. Impossible. If you think the old Realms of Chaos books are hard to get a hold of, nothing compared to these.
I think I need to see what I can find. There's bound to be something out there I can use.
I say that the Nurgle one is my favourite. Actually, that's not true. The Slaanesh one is my favourite.
Of course it is, because you're George.
Of course it is.
Absolutely. But for lots of different reasons. The Slaanesh one, you know how very often Games Workshop is sort of stymied with Slaanesh. They don't really know how to present him. Because it is difficult, given the demographics that they're going for. It is difficult to provide a balanced notion of what Slaanesh is. The Liber Chaotic Slaanesh doesn't bother. It just goes for the gusto. It goes for everything that Slaanesh essentially is. And it's explicit. It's absolutely explicit. And it's brilliant. I love the Liber Chaotica Slaanesh.
Yeah. Right, that's my new thing then. I need to try and find a copy of these books somehow. Because I need to read things in that much detail. Because
they are really good. Even Khorne. Khorne for me is my least favourite Chaos God. He's just too straightforward for me, you know?
Death, kill.
But the Liber Chaotic Khorne is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It tells you how Khorne was created.
Right.
It tells you where Khorne came from. As the first Chaos God, it tells you how he rose and became... You know how you've got the fall of the Eldar for Slaanesh? There's something similar for Khorne.
Oh.
It wouldn't surprise me if there'll be allusions to like Cain and Abel, like Khorne's the first act of violence.
You're not far off. You're not far off.
Save that for another time, because I think that's one that we can get right into. I would love to know about the origins of Khorne.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really
As
cool.
we are coming up to the 2-hour mark now, I think we can start closing things down. So,
I think so.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this episode.
Me too. I can't tell you honestly. It's like I was saying before. It's been a little oasis in the storms of the warp. Really
It's been
has.
a little bit of madness in the madness of the world. So, Jai, as the guest,
Yes.
is there anything that you would like to pimp out or tell people about before we close down for the evening?
I don't believe so. I'm available on Twitter at JIIDEE.
Okay. And George?
Absolutely. I just had a fairly big project published with the photographer Nick Hardy, Born in Blood. If you like your fiction and your imagery, I would say triggering. Really, really quite disturbing. I think you'll get something out of it. It's a collection based around the concept of mental illness. Features fiction from me, photographs from Nick, and all proceeds from it will be going to mental health charities, the first being mind.org.
Yep.
And that's available over at www.strangeplaygrounds.com, I believe. And you can also get my short stories at www.strangeplaygrounds.com.
And if you like horror, I recommend this stuff.
Thanks.
It's not like it got stuck in my head, George.
No,
at
not
all.
at all. Not at all.
Thank you, George. Yeah.
That's the most consistent feedback I tend to get.
It got stuck in my head. Yeah. I was in the house by myself.
I'm glad to have territory there. I'm glad to have a little flag planted in your mind.
And the nightmares never stop. As for myself, you can check out all of these shows at the Fluffenhammer.weebly.com. You can check out my other project at thecreeks.weebly.com. You can find them all at theoldoilhouse.co.uk. The Creeks is 3 men in a room slowly getting drunk as they try to unravel conspiracy and paranormal nonsense. I'm fairly sure that this is going to break one of us. One of us will end up doing something horrible and going to prison for it. I am certain of it.
I want to be on that show as a guest.
I'm
really
trying to
do.
work out ways so we can do something. Unfortunately, I'm the only one out of the 3 of us with Skype. But I'm trying to work something out. Mostly, it's this got discussed in the upcoming episode, which is called The Scaly Menace, which should be out by the time you hear this. Outside of that,
Brilliant.
you can check out my audio readings at youtube.com/Grufflock, or you can go to gruffnexusaudio.weebly.com, which has everything that I've done. And then in the next couple of weeks, Riveted Sounds is going to be kicking ass. Everything is now in place. I've got the site down for a while to do some work on it, but this is going to pick up quite bigly. So, if bigly, that's not a word. This is going to
Bigly.
Yeah, bigly. This is going to pick up quite
Bigly.
interestingly. Something is going to be coming out of Riveted Sounds very soon, which is going to be very interesting. It's going to take a little while to get everything in order to be able to do the push. I'm really excited, and I wish I could tell more about it. There has been emails back and forth getting stuff done, and I am really excited about what this is going to be. It's one of my heroes is getting some audiobook stuff.
Interesting.
Oh yes, and it's completely public domain, so yay!
Yay.
Outside of that, I think that's everything I've been doing. So, oh yes, actually, and if you're into Transformers, check out the TF Nation podcast, which is updating once every 2 weeks, where I grab a guest from the world of Transformers and the Transformers community, sit them down, and don't actually have any kind of format, just a discussion. I enjoy it. I hope other people do as well. With all that being said, thank you very much to George.
Absolute pleasure. Really, tonight has been so much fun. So much fun.
Thank you so much to Jai for coming out of the warp and saving our skins with this episode.
Yes.
No, so it was good fun. I apologise for it coming across as very much like be impressed at me, be impressed by my tales of Northern.
Well, no, that's why we get the
They were
guests in.
impressive.
We want to know about the guests. We want to know about how this ties into their life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what we wanted on this podcast. It was perfect. Perfect
And I
stuff.
really enjoyed it. So, with all that being said, we are out of here. Good night, everybody. And when we see you next, I promise you we will have a quiz again. Night, everyone.